HOA, Karen pulls gun on my daughter's crutches. She lost her job in 3 minutes. The moment I heard the click of that gun, time froze. My daughter's metal crutches trembled against the pavement, and her eyes, wide, terrified, locked on the woman we all knew too well. Karen, the self-appointed queen of our HOA. It was supposed to be a calm Saturday afternoon. The air smelled of fresh-cut grass, the kind that fills every quiet suburb with peace. But in one heartbeat, that peace shattered. Karen's trembling hands aimed a black pistol straight at my little girl's crutches, her only support since the accident that left her legs weak. Neighbors screamed. Someone shouted, "Call 911." I stepped between them without thinking, hands up, heart pounding so hard it drowned out everything else. The sunlight flashed on the gun barrel, a cruel reflection that burned into my memory. "Stay back." Karen yelled, her voice cracking with rage. "I told you, those things are dangerous. They scratch my sidewalk." Those things? She meant my daughter's crutches. My daughter, just 15, barely healing, stood frozen, tears streaking down her cheeks. I could smell the sharp tang of gun oil mixed with the sweetness of blooming roses from a neighbor's fence. The contrast made the scene almost unreal, like a nightmare stitched into daylight. In that moment, I knew nothing about HOA rules or suburban politics mattered anymore. What mattered was stopping a woman so blinded by control that she saw a disabled child as a threat. Before you hear what happened next, tell me, where are you watching from? Because what you'll see in this story might change how you look at your own neighborhood. That day, when Karen pulled that trigger, she didn't just lose her temper, she lost everything. Before that gun ever entered our lives, things were simple, quiet, even peaceful. Our street in Maplewood Estates was one of those neighborhoods you see in postcards, trimmed lawns, porch swings, and weekend cookouts. My daughter, Emily, had just started walking again with her crutches after months of physical therapy. Every small step she took was a victory. Each morning, I'd watch her make her way down the ramp I built myself, smooth wood rails, painted white, lined with hanging flower pots. She'd pause halfway, smile back at me and say, "Dad, I'll walk on my own someday." That ramp wasn't just a piece of wood, it was her bridge back to life. Then came Karen. She lived 2 doors down, always dressed sharp, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. She was the HOA president and took it upon herself to preserve property values. The first time she saw the ramp, she frowned like it was a stain on her perfect neighborhood. One morning, as I adjusted the railing, she strutted over, heels clicking like a metronome of disapproval. "Excuse me," she said, arms crossed. "Was this ramp approved by the HOA?" I told her it was for my disabled daughter, and city permits were already in place. But she didn't care. "Well, it's unsightly," she said. "You can't just build whatever you want because of sympathy." That word, sympathy, burned in my chest. I bit my tongue, not wanting seen. Emily stood behind me, clutching her crutches like they were armor. Over the next few weeks, little things changed. We started finding warning notices taped to our door, noise complaints, ramp violations, aesthetic disruptions, all signed by Karen. Still, I try to keep peace. My wife baked her cookies once, hoping kindness might melt the frost. Karen smiled, took them, and dropped them straight into her trash bin. I saw it from my porch. The smell of jasmine from our yard used to calm me. Now every time I caught it on the breeze, I felt tension coil tighter in my gut. Something told me Karen wasn't done. Before you hear what she did next, tell me, have you ever had a neighbor who crossed the line? Because ours was just getting started. It started small, like most wars in suburbia do. A letter in the mailbox, folded perfectly, HOA seal at the top. The paper smelled faintly of Karen's perfume, that sharp floral scent that somehow felt like a warning. Violation notice, unauthorized structure, accessibility ramp must be removed or modified within 10 days. My jaw clenched as I read it. Emily was at the kitchen table, practicing balancing on one leg while coloring her therapy worksheets. I crumpled the paper before she could see it, but Karen made sure she saw the next one. The following morning, when Emily wheeled herself down to the mailbox, The letter was taped to the ramp itself, with red markers circling the words noncompliant. She looked up at me confused. Dad, am I in trouble? My throat tightened. No, sweetheart. Some people just don't understand kindness. Later that week, Karen came by again, clipboard in hand, sunglasses reflecting her front door like a mirror. I gave you a chance, she said, tapping her pen. If you don't remove that ramp, I'll have to file an official HOA complaint. It violates our exterior uniformity clause. Karen, it's not a gazebo. It's a ramp for a disabled child. I snapped. She smirked. Rules are rules. You can carry her inside if it's that important. That line, it carved itself into my memory. My wife gasped. Emily started to cry. I could almost hear the faint squeak of her crutches trembling against the porch rail. From that day, the harassment escalated. Our mailbox was suddenly filled with flyers about neighborhood safety standards. HOA meetings turned into Karen's personal courtroom, each speech dripping with passive-aggressive sweetness. One afternoon, I found bright orange paint sprayed across the base of Emily's ramp. Eyesore. The scent of paint thinner still lingered when I called the HOA office. They told me to handle neighbor disputes civilly. That night, I sat on the porch with a mug of cold coffee, staring into the quiet street. The cicadas hummed like static in my ears. I felt helpless, but under that helplessness, something darker brewed. A promise that if Karen kept pushing, I wouldn't just sit back and watch. Emily came out quietly and leaned against me. Dad, she whispered, why does she hate us? I wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Because some people mistake power for purpose. I didn't know it then, but the storm had only just begun. Within a few weeks, our once friendly street turned into a silent battlefield. Neighbors who used to wave started looking away. The scent of backyard barbecues that once filled the summer air was replaced by the bitter smell of wet paint from Karen's beautification projects. She was tightening her grip on the HOA, using every meeting to remind everyone that rules keep us safe. Safe? My daughter couldn't even roll down her ramp without someone whispering. One evening, as I was watering the front lawn, Karen appeared again, clipboard under her arm, that same smug smile plastered across her face. Still ignoring official warnings, I see, she said. I'm ignoring nonsense. I replied, not looking up. She laughed softly. You really think your personal drama outweighs community standards? I turned off the hose, the sound cutting sharply through the tension. You're talking about my daughter's mobility, not my drama. She stepped closer, her perfume heavy and invasive. Then maybe you should teach her to walk properly instead of turning our neighborhood into a hospital ward. That sentence, it echoed in my skull like thunder. I saw red for a moment, my fists curling, but before I could speak, Emily's voice came from behind me, small, shaking. Ms. Karen, I'm trying my best. Karen froze. For the first time, I saw a flicker of guilt in her eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it came. She turned sharply and walked away, her heels clicking like gunshots down the driveway. After that, the tension spread. Some neighbors, like old Mr. Jenkins across the street, whispered their support, but refused to speak up publicly. Others sided with Karen, afraid of fines or confrontation. We became the talk of every HOA meeting. I could hear my name tossed around whenever I passed the community center, the ramp guy, the sympathy seeker. Then came the fake accident report. Karen filed a complaint claiming Emily's crutches had scratched her car paint near the mailbox. She demanded we pay for the damage or face legal action. The HOA backed her pending review. That night, I sat in the living room staring at the stack of letters, each one another blow. My wife held my hand and whispered, "We can't keep living like this." I looked through the window. Karen's house lit up like a command post, blinds half open, as if she were waiting to see if I'd finally break. I didn't break, but I did start planning. The breaking point came on a Sunday afternoon, the kind that starts peaceful and ends in chaos. Emily and I were setting up a small lemonade stand at the end of our driveway. She begged to do something normal for once, something that didn't involve hospitals or therapy sessions. The sun was warm, the scent of lemons filled the air, and for a brief hour she laughed again. Then Karen showed up. She pulled her shiny silver SUV right up beside the stand, window rolling down with a hiss. Her sunglasses reflected my daughter's smiling face, and that reflection still haunts me. "What's this supposed to be?" she asked, voice sharp. "Just a lemonade stand," I said evenly. She wanted to feel like every other kid. Karen's lips curled. "You're obstructing the sidewalk again. Technically, this is an HOA violation. You can't conduct sales on community property. It's lemonade, Karen, not a business." She smirked. "Rules don't bend for pity parties." Emily's laughter died instantly. The look on her face, pure hurt, tore something inside me. I stepped forward. "Karen," I said quietly, "if you can't find empathy, at least find silence." Her eyes narrowed. "Don't threaten me, sir." Then, in front of half the street, she stepped out of her car and kicked one of the crutches lying near Emily's chair. It clattered to the ground, metal echoing against the pavement. The sound was louder than thunder to me. "Enough," I shouted, stepping between them. "You just crossed the line." Karen scoffed. "You'll regret speaking to me like that. I run this neighborhood." Neighbors started peeking through their curtains. One woman whispered, "Is she crazy?" Another recorded on her phone. Emily was crying softly now, trying to reach for her crutch with trembling fingers. I bent down, helped her up, and turned back to Karen. "You want to play power games?" "Fine," I said, my voice shaking with fury. "But this time, I'm recording too." I lifted my phone. Karen froze. For the first time, the Queen of Maplewood looked nervous. Then, without another word, she stormed back into her car and drove off. The air smelled like burnt rubber and sour lemons. My hands trembled as I hugged Emily close. That night, I sat awake replaying it all. My daughter's tears, Karen's sneer, the sound of that crutch hitting concrete. I knew then that something inside me had snapped, not in anger, but in resolve. If Karen wanted a war, I'd make sure she picked the wrong family. For days after that lemonade incident, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards, every car door at night made my nerves jolt. I knew Karen wouldn't stop, not until she won, so I decided to fight back. Not with anger, but with proof. I bought 2 small security cameras, cheap ones, but clear enough to catch a lie. One I hid inside the porch light, the other I mounted beneath the mailbox, angled perfectly toward the ramp. Every motion, every late-night visit, every coincidence would now be on record. The first few days, nothing. Then came the footage. At 11:43 p.m. on a Thursday, a figure appeared. Karen, wearing a hoodie, spray can in hand. She crouched beside the ramp, whispering something I couldn't hear. The next morning, I found the words "Move Out" scrawled across the ramp rails. Emily cried when she saw it. I didn't tell her who did it, but I knew. I copied the footage onto a flash drive, labeled it insurance. The next HOA meeting came on a Saturday evening. Karen stood at the front of the clubhouse, lecturing about neighborhood harmony. I waited until she said, "Some homeowners simply don't respect the rules," and that's when I stood up. Like spray painting a disabled child's ramp, I said loud enough for the room to freeze. Karen's face drained of color. "Excuse me." I walked forward, placed my laptop on the table, and pressed play. The video filled the screen. Karen caught red-handed, her voice clear as she hissed, "Let's see you use that now." Gasps filled the room. Someone in the back muttered, "Oh my God." Another whispered, "That's the HOA president?" Karen lunged for the laptop, but I stepped back. "Touch it and I'll file for harassment again, this time with video." Her mask cracked. The confident posture vanished, replaced by trembling rage. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, muttering, "You'll regret this." But as the clubhouse door slammed, something told me this wasn't the end. When Karen was cornered, she didn't retreat, she retaliated. That night, the air felt heavier than usual. I remember the smell of rain on the asphalt, faint thunder in the distance, and a pit in my stomach that told me the storm wasn't just weather. It was Karen, and she was about to do something far worse. It happened 3 nights later. The air was thick and humid, thunder grumbling far off, The kind of night that warns you something bad's about to happen. Emily had spent the evening drawing at the kitchen table flowers, stars, anything bright. I remember her laughing softly, her crutches leaning by the wall. For a moment, life felt normal again. Then came the knock. 3 hard pounds on the front door. Not polite, not patient, angry. I opened it and there she was, Karen. Rain clung to her hair, mascara streaked down her cheeks, and in her shaking hand was a small black handgun. Her HOA badge still hung around her neck, like some twisted symbol of authority. "You humiliated me," she hissed, voice trembling. "You think you can embarrass me in front of the whole neighborhood?" My heart nearly stopped. "Karen, put that down. You're making a mistake." Behind me, I heard Emily whisper, "Dad." Karen's eyes flicked toward her voice. "That girl, she ruined everything. All this sympathy garbage, the pity parties. Karen, stop." I shouted, stepping between them. The smell of rain and gun oil mixed in the air, sharp and electric. My hands were up, palms open. "You need to calm down." She took a step closer, finger twitching near the trigger. "You think I lost everything because of you?" "No, it's because of her." Then before I could move, she turned the gun. Not at Emily, but at her crutches, leaning by the porch rail. She pulled the trigger. The sound shattered the night, like lightning striking metal. A single shot. Sparks flew as the bullet hit the steel crutch, snapping it in half. Emily screamed, the sound tearing through the rain. For a split second, I thought she'd been hit. I lunged forward, shoving Karen's arm upward. The gun fired again, into the air this time. We struggled, her perfume and the bitter scent of gunpowder burning my nose. Neighbors' lights flicked on. Someone yelled, "Call the cops." Another voice screamed, "She's got a gun." Karen kicked me backward and stumbled down the steps, clutching the weapon. The streetlight caught her face. Wild, desperate, humiliated. She pointed the gun again, but now her hands were shaking uncontrollably. "Stay away," she shrieked. "You don't get to ruin me." Then came the sound of sirens, close, fast, red and blue lights cut through the rain like judgment. Karen froze, realizing what she'd done. She dropped the gun. It hit the ground with a hollow clatter, rolling near the broken crutch. 2 officers tackled her within seconds. One yelled, "Weapons secure." The other turned to me, and Emily, "Are you hurt?" Emily clung to me, sobbing. She tried to kill my crutches. Those words broke me, not because of fear, but because of what they meant. My daughter didn't see danger. She saw the destruction of something that gave her freedom. The officers cuffed Karen as she shouted, "He set me up. They're lying." Her voice faded under the wail of the patrol car. Rain hammered the street, washing away the chalk drawings Emily had made that afternoon. I remember kneeling there beside her broken crutch, water dripping from the porch light camera I'd installed days earlier, still recording everything. That night, Karen didn't just pull a trigger. She ended her own life as she knew it. She lost her power, her image, her job, and in just 3 minutes, she lost everything she thought made her superior. Before you hear what happened after the police took her away, tell me, if someone pointed a gun near your child, what would you have done? The night after the shooting didn't feel real. Even as the flashing red and blue lights faded down the street, our house still pulsed with their memory. The smell of gunpowder lingered in the air, sharp and metallic, mixing with the faint scent of wet wood from the porch. Every creak of the floor made Emily flinch. Every car door outside made my wife check the window. We didn't sleep. None of us did. Emily sat in her wheelchair, holding the broken half of her crutch like a wounded soldier clutching a fallen flag. "Why did she hate me so much?" she whispered. Her voice was so small I could barely hear it over the hum of the ceiling fan. I knelt beside her. "She didn't hate you, sweetheart. She hated what she didn't understand." But deep down, I wasn't sure that was true. Karen's hatred had been personal, too personal. It was about control, ego, and pride that couldn't stand compassion existing where she ruled. By morning, the story had already spread. Neighbors who once stayed silent were now knocking on our door, bringing casseroles and apologies. One woman said, "We're so sorry." We should have said something sooner. The HOA board called an emergency meeting that same day without Karen. They were shaken, scared even. Nobody wanted to be associated with her now. The same people who defended her were suddenly talking about policy reform and community healing. When the police returned for statements, they showed me the body cam footage. Karen being led away, soaked in rain, screaming that she was provoked. But the porch camera told the truth. Every second of that night was captured, the threats, the gun, the shot. The detective nodded. This footage makes it easy. You did the right thing recording her. Still, I couldn't feel victorious. Not when my daughter jumped every time she heard thunder. Not when the scent of cleaning solvent reminded her of that night's gun smoke. That evening, she asked quietly, "Can I still use my ramp?" I smiled weakly. "You can use it as long as you want. No one will ever touch it again." As the sun set, I looked out across Maplewood Estates. The neighborhood was silent for once, too silent. The same street that once buzzed with gossip now held its breath. Something had shifted. The fear that used to live inside my home had moved across the street into hers. And soon, the world was going to see exactly what Karen had done. The following days blurred together, police reports, hospital visits, and endless retellings of the same nightmare. Emily hadn't been physically harmed, but trauma doesn't show up on X-rays. She flinched at loud noises, refused to sleep alone, and avoided looking out the window toward Karen's house. The detectives came back twice. The first time, they collected every piece of evidence: the porch light camera, my phone recordings, the shell casing that had rolled beneath the step. The second time, they came with questions. Detective Harris, a calm man with tired eyes, sat across from us in the living room. "Mr. Carter," he said, "I've reviewed the footage. Karen's intent seems pretty clear. She wasn't aiming at you, but at your daughter's support equipment. That's still aggravated assault with a firearm. My wife asked, she could have killed her, couldn't she?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am. That's why the DA's office is taking it seriously." Emily sat beside me, hands trembling in her lap. "Will she come back?" she whispered. "No, sweetheart," I said softly. "They took her gun and her badge." Later that day, we visited the hospital, not for wounds, but for reassurance. The staff there already knew our story. It had spread across local news. One nurse kneeled beside Emily and said, "You're a brave little fighter." She smiled faintly for the first time since that night. But the hardest moment came when a reporter showed up outside the hospital. "Mr. Carter," he asked, cameras flashing, "is it true the HOA president pulled a gun on your disabled daughter?" I didn't answer. I just walked past him, holding Emily's hand tighter. The only sound was the click of cameras and the echo of my daughter's crutch tapping the floor. That evening, I got a call from the police. "Karen's been charged," Detective Harris said. "Aggravated assault, unlawful weapon discharge, and public endangerment. The HOA board has suspended her." I exhaled for what felt like the first time in days. "Thank you," I said quietly. He paused. "She keeps saying you set her up. You might want to be careful for a while." The warning stayed with me long after I hung up. Outside, the neighborhood looked the same: trimmed hedges, white fences, American flags, but something invisible had changed. Fear had shifted. It was no longer ours to carry. For the first time, justice felt close. But I knew the real reckoning would come in court. The courtroom smelled faintly of old wood and nerves. Every sound, the scrape of chairs, the shuffling of papers, echoed through the silence like thunder. I sat beside Emily in the front row, her crutches resting against the bench, one of them still bearing the dent from the bullet. Karen sat across the room at the defendant's table, wearing a beige blazer that couldn't hide her shaking hands. Her once perfect hair hung limp. Gone was the queen of Maplewood Estates. In her place sat a woman unraveling. When the judge entered, everyone rose. My heart pounded as the bailiff read the charges: aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, unlawful discharge, reckless endangerment. Karen's lawyer tried to soften her image. "My client was emotionally distressed, Your Honor." She acted without intent to harm anyone. She fired at an object, not a person. The prosecutor didn't miss a beat. That object was a disabled child's mobility aid. The intent is clear: humiliation and intimidation. Then came the moment I dreaded. They called me to the stand. I walked slowly, aware of every eye on me. The microphone smelled faintly of disinfectant and dust. "Tell the court what happened," the prosecutor said. I described everything: the knock, the rain, the gun. My voice broke when I got to the part where Emily screamed. I glanced at my daughter. Tears streaked her face, but she nodded for me to keep going. "Mr. Carter," the prosecutor asked, "what did your daughter say after the incident?" I swallowed hard. "She said she tried to kill my crutches." The jury shifted. Even the judge's expression softened. Then they played the footage from my porch light camera. The screen flickered, showing Karen pointing the gun, the flash of the muzzle, the metallic clang. The sound made Emily flinch again. The courtroom went silent except for the rain tapping against the windows, like that night was repeating itself. Karen looked down, unable to meet anyone's gaze. The prosecutor turned. "Mrs. Collins, do you deny this is you?" Her lawyer whispered something, but Karen snapped. "They pushed me. They humiliated me. That girl made me look weak." The outburst cut through the room like a blade. Even her own attorney stepped back, face pale. The judge's gavel struck once. "Order. Mrs. Collins, control yourself." Karen froze, breathing heavily. After closing statements, the judge recessed for deliberation. Emily and I sat together in silence, her small hand in mine. The courtroom smelled of tension and coffee gone cold. Every minute stretched like an hour. Finally, the jury returned. The foreman, a quiet woman with gray hair, stood. "On the charge of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, we find the defendant guilty." The word hit the room like a bell. Karen slumped forward, her face buried in her hands. The judge's voice echoed as he listed the sentence: probation, mandatory therapy, community service, and the permanent loss of her HOA position. Her firearm license revoked. Her professional career suspended pending review. When they let her out, she glanced at me, eyes full of something between hate and regret. But I didn't look away. As the gavel struck one last time, Emily whispered, "Dad, does that mean we're safe now?" I squeezed her hand. "It means we can finally breathe." Outside, sunlight poured through the courthouse doors. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, but this time I didn't care. For the first time in months, justice didn't feel like a fantasy. It felt real. Karen had pulled a gun, but in the end, it was truth that disarmed her. Justice may have been delivered in court, but closure took its own time. In the days following the verdict, the neighborhood changed. The same people who once crossed the street to avoid us now waved from their lawns. Mailboxes that had once carried hate-filled notices now carried apology letters. But I wasn't ready to forgive, not yet. 3 days after the sentencing, I saw her again. Karen. She stood outside her house with a for sale sign half stuck into her perfect front yard. Her shoulders were hunched, her eyes hollow. The once pristine flower beds were overgrown, her flag faded, her reputation gone. Emily was in the passenger seat beside me as we drove past. She spotted her first. "Dad, that's her." I nodded silently. For a moment, Karen and I locked eyes. The air between us felt heavy with everything that had happened: the ramp, the humiliation, the gun. I almost drove on, but something in me needed to finish this. I parked, got out, walked across the street. Karen didn't move. Her arms were crossed tightly, trembling slightly. "I know what you're here to say," she muttered. "You got what you wanted. I lost everything." I stopped a few feet away. "I didn't want you to lose everything, Karen. I wanted you to stop hurting people." She looked up, eyes red-rimmed but still proud. "You destroyed me." I shook my head. "You did that yourself when you aimed a gun at a child's crutches." For a long time, she didn't speak. The only sound was wind brushing through the broken fence between our yards. Finally, her voice cracked. "Do you think they'll ever forget?" "No," I said quietly, "but maybe they'll learn from it." Behind me, Emily had opened the car door slightly, watching. Karen's gaze fell on her, on the small girl she'd once called a pity case. For the first time, something like guilt crossed her face. "I never meant to scare her," she whispered. I stepped closer. "Intent doesn't undo impact, Karen. You could have ended her life and mine with one bad second of pride." Tears spilled down her cheeks. She turned away. "You can go now." I did, but before leaving, I said softly, "You can rebuild your life. Just don't ever rebuild your hate." Back in the car, Emily asked, "Did she say sorry?" I looked out the window, watching Karen disappear behind her half-empty home. "Not yet," I said, "but maybe someday." As we drove away, I saw a moving truck pull onto her street. Her time as Maplewood's queen was over. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift. The fear, the anger, the endless tension, it all started to fade into the rearview mirror. Karen had tried to take power with a gun, but in the end, it was accountability that took it from her. A year has passed since that night. The night a gunshot echoed through Maplewood Estates and changed everything. Today, when I step onto the porch, the ramp gleams in the morning sun, freshly painted sky blue by Emily's own hands. It's no longer a symbol of pity or defiance. It's a monument to survival. The neighborhood has softened too. A new HOA president was elected, a kind woman named Mrs. Jacobs, who personally brought cookies when Emily finally ditched her last crutch. The same people who once looked away now smile, wave, even help with groceries. Fear has left the street, replaced by something stronger, accountability. Emily walks short distances now, her steps uneven but proud. Every movement sounds like hope, the soft click of her brace against the porch boards, the sigh of wind through the flowers. Sometimes she sits on the edge of the ramp, sketching the sunrise, her drawings full of color again. One morning, as she watched the mail truck pull up, she said, "Dad, do you think Karen ever got better?" I paused, thinking of that last moment we'd shared. Her hollow eyes, her trembling voice. "I hope she did," I said honestly, because carrying hate that heavy can destroy a person. Emily nodded slowly. "Then maybe we both won." Her words hit me harder than any verdict ever could. She wasn't thinking about revenge. She was thinking about healing. And that's when I realized she was stronger than any of us. Later that week, I stood in court again, not for testimony this time, but to watch Karen's final hearing. She was calm, almost unrecognizable. She pled guilty to all charges and accepted mandatory counseling. Before leaving, she turned to us briefly and mouthed something I'd been waiting to hear. "I'm sorry." It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was enough. That night back home, Emily and I sat on the porch as fireflies flickered in the yard. The scent of honeysuckle drifted through the air, soft and sweet, the kind of peace we used to take for granted. "Dad," she said, leaning against my shoulder, "can we keep the ramp forever?" I smiled. "We'll keep it until you don't need it. And even then, we'll keep it as a reminder. A reminder that even in the quietest suburbs, courage sometimes comes in the shape of a ramp, a child's laughter, and a family that refuses to be broken. Because in the end, justice isn't about revenge, it's about restoration. And in Maplewood Estates, we finally found ours.